My sister was absolutely heartbroken from her boyfriend. Well, I did not want to go down the same path, so I listened to everything my sister said, and I agree with her. Every man walking this planet is nothing more than a jerk. Well, I guess the joke's on me because my sister is not who I thought she was. Having an older sister has its advantages, which I currently enjoy. My older sisters, Rebecca and I, are the only children which my parents gave birth to. My parents got married quite late, and they never tired to make it known to me and my sister that late marriage was bad. My sister was 3 years ahead of me in academics. I was in my high school final year while she was in her third year in college. During the times when she visits home, I'd always be around her as she received calls from her lover and numerous male admirers. It was common to find her flaunting the gifts which she'd received from these guys. If that was all, then I would not have been so desirous to have my boyfriend. My sister would show me pictures of beautiful places which she had visited with her boyfriend, and it only heightened my interest to get into college so I could equally enjoy the same things my sister does. You can imagine the joy I had when we were having our high school graduation party. I was happy because I was graduating from high school, but more so, I was elated because I would be going off to college soon. I've recently got into college to study computer science, and I stayed with my older sister. It was then I discovered that all my sister had told me was nothing compared to what was going on. Her boyfriend, who was a student, would often come to the house, and the two lovebirds would make me jealous to the bone. He was really into my sister. I finally got a breakthrough when Charles approached me for a relationship. Charles was a guy who was in the same department as me, but he was a year ahead. I told my sister about the cute guy hitting on me, and she said that everybody needs somebody. So I've invited Charles over to my house, where I would give him my reply. A reply which is already obvious. Update number 1. There's already been a different turn of events since the last time I posted, and it's not been in favor of my sister. My sister was down with a fever, headache, and body pain some 4 weeks ago. We both felt it was nothing serious, so I got her an aspirin. The drug did not alleviate the pain in any way, and my sister suddenly began throwing up. It dawned on me that the situation was more serious than I thought. I began thinking about what to do when her boyfriend shows up. We both took her to the hospital where the doctors were running some tests. I called my parents to inform them of the recent developments, but told them not to panic as my elder sister had been stabilized. I promised to keep them updated on the progress of everything. The test results soon came back, and the doctor noted that my sister was 3 weeks pregnant. The news was not a funny one. It was not welcomed by anybody. A pregnancy at this time was not something that was needed at all. My sister's boyfriend asked to go pick up his credit card to make a payment for the hospital bill, but he didn't show up. I had to pay my sister's bills with an allowance that was meant for the both of us. My sister and I returned home, and we were both distraught for some days. Well, my sister was worse as she was the pregnant one. We had not heard from her boyfriend who wanted to pick up his credit card for days. My sister was worried, and I began getting angry at him. This was no way to treat a girl you've gotten pregnant. This was not something my sister should go through alone. She did not get herself pregnant. I finally visited his house when he failed at reaching him through the phone. I got to his home and he was not happy to see me. Well, I didn't care. My concern was his taking responsibility for putting my sister in the family's way. I did not disrespectfully approach him, even though such an individual who had behaved irresponsibly deserved no such thing as respect. I informed him that my sister had been trying to reach him since she got back from the hospital, and he said I should tell her to quit doing so. I would have beat him up if I could. This was someone who was acting like my sister was his world. I mean, I'd seen the way he was always into her. I would have been the last person to believe he would be asking her to keep her distance from him. He kicked me out of his house before I could say anything. I pondered what I would tell my sister on my way going home. How could I tell her that her boyfriend was not willing to be identified with her pregnancy? I knew it was going to shatter her, so I simply told her that I could not find him at his place of residence. My sister cried for days. My parents were calling to know about her situation, but I lied that the doctors said my sister simply needed to rest. There was no way I could break the news of her pregnancy to them. My sister soon went to her boyfriend's place herself one day when I went to lectures. She got to his place and found him. The boyfriend's reaction was enough to kill my sister. He told her that neither of them was ready to become a parent. He finally threw some money at her and asked her to go get an abortion. I got back from lectures that day to find my sister crying with $50 bills scattered amongst her room. It was the money her boyfriend's given her to cover the cost of the abortion. I advised my sister against having it. I knew the shame and all it would cost her if the news of her pregnancy got to my parents and those who knew her. But in my view, the child whose life she would take had done nothing wrong. He equally deserved to live. After thinking about the whole thing, my sister decided that an abortion was probably the best option, as a child could jeopardize her studies. And how was she to go back home with the child at the end of the day, when they expected her to return with a certificate? My sister had the child aborted, but there were complications. She had her womb damaged in the process, and it meant she would never be able to have a child again. My sister's sorrows was something I could not relate to. If only she had listened to me, then she would not be in such a situation. She soon became the most miserable person I've ever known. Her experience made me put a stop to sex with my boyfriend, Charles, for a while. I didn't give him a convincing reason, though. I only told him that I was going through a lot at the moment and needed time to think things through. He was understanding. He told me he wasn't dating me because of the sex anyways. I'm currently trying to babysit my sister, who's still finding it hard to come to terms that she's never going to be a mother. Update number 2. So, I've finally resumed having sexual intercourse with my boyfriend Charles. I finally got over the fear of being treated the same way as my sister. My sister, on the other hand, has continued to grow bitter. I met with my boyfriend in school the other day, and he told me how my sister had been hostile towards him when he came looking for me at her place. I wasn't happy about what he said, but I didn't want to rush to conclusions till I heard from my older sister. I got home that day and inquired of my sister about what happened. So she admits that Charles had actually come looking for me, but simply acted in my best interest by asking him to keep off. I wondered how that was in my best interest. As though she could hear my thoughts, my sister began telling me to break off from my boyfriend so I don't end up like her, a woman without a womb. It was clear that my sister was in the wrong. She had poured out her frustrations on poor Charles, and it's not fair. Charles was not the one who got her pregnant and advised her to go get an abortion, which later damaged her. I did not say anything yet, as my sister was still hurting. I just tried to play the part of the understanding sister, even though I clearly remembered asking her not to abort the child. I gave Charles the apology that I owed him the next time we met. I had to inform him of what my sister had recently passed through. He sympathized with her. I mean, anybody would. He understood that the whole thing was probably getting to her and she was just reacting out of anger and pain. We decided that he limited the way he came to visit, especially when my sister was around. After a few weeks of staying indoors, my elder sister resumed her lectures, but with a different attitude, mentality, and mindset. She sort of had a personality vendetta against men. She decided she was not going to mingle with any man. Men are evil, she would say. I did not believe her, as I knew where her newfound ideology had originated from. She had been in love with a few months back, and she never complained about anything about men then. Now that she's been jilted and all, every man was now useless in her eyesight. I did not argue about her on her notions, even though I knew it was wrong to generalize every man as same, simply because of any experience you had with one. Within the days that followed, my sister would be present when I spoke over the phone with my boyfriend, and she would just scoff or make derogatory comments. I did my best to ignore her, even though she was starting to get on my nerves. Why did she expect me to join her crusade against guys and relationships simply because hers did not turn out right? Things almost turned sour between us one day when Charles and I were at home making out. My sister had gone to lectures, and she was not supposed to be back till later the day. But she suddenly walked in on us without even knocking. We stopped what we were doing, and my sister was not supposed to drag the issue out, but oh, she did. She immediately asked Charles to leave the house, and began cursing and cussing while he made to leave. I could not sit back and watch my sister ruin things for me, so I confront her. And things were getting heated up until Charles intervened by pleading with me to let it go. I tried ignoring my sister after the incident. She would later approach me to act as though she was looking out for me. I simply ignored her. I knew she just wanted me to join her wagon of men are not needed group. I wasn't having any of it. If she had not been unfortunate with her boyfriend, she'd probably be flaunting pictures and boasting about places they visited just as a couple. Charles no longer comes to the house. We meet at his place, or we could sometimes just meet at an eatery. This is because we don't just want my sister intruding into our love life. She should not expect me to deprive myself of happiness because she can't find any herself. Update number 3. Hey guys, my sister graduated from college 6 months ago without any love interest. I'm currently following her path. Yes, you heard that right. I'm not in a relationship, and I'm certainly not wishing to be in one. Let me state my reasons before you or anyone jumps to a conclusion. Right after my sister had sent Charles out of the home, we began seeing each other just like I noted, and I ensured it did not affect our relationship in any way. We continued with our love life. Charles, his birthday came up, and I went to surprise him. He had given me a key to his apartment prior, and so I went to drop off a cake, which I've ordered for him, but I met his apartment door open, thinking he was the one who left it open, obviously. I waltzed inside only to find an unclad lady. She was putting his apartment in order. With the way she was feeling at home, I quickly concluded, oh, it's his sister. I greeted her warmly and told her that I wanted to surprise Charles. I began professing and confessing how sweet he was and how lucky I felt to have him as a boyfriend. Well, at this point, the lady's eyes just kept looking at me with more and more surprise. She suddenly burst out laughing before seriously telling me that Charles was her boyfriend, and they've been dating since high school. I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that my boyfriend, whom I've been dating for some months, was the boyfriend of another lady, and when they've been together before he got into college. If her claim was true, then Charles was one smart, manipulative fellow. We were both standing there looking at ourselves when the celebrant Charles waltzed in. Charles was surprised to find both of us in his apartment. He never expected that his girlfriend of so many years would pay him a visit at his home. Immediately she saw him. She pounced on him and began accusing him of sleeping around with girls in college, while she supported him with the part of their allowance which her parents provided. He didn't bother to look in my direction once. He just tried pacifying his girlfriend. I didn't need any other confirmation that all she had said was true. I got home that day and refused to tell my sister what went down. I didn't want her to gloat about being right all along. She observed that something was wrong with me, and she pressed me hard for 2 days before I finally told her what happened. I could not hide my emotions for long, you know. My heartbreak was reflected in my activities. I've been skipping classes since the discovery of Charles's unfaithfulness. I'd equally avoided his calls and refused to reply to the text messages which he had been sending to me. Calls and messages that came days after his longtime girlfriend must have gone back. He wanted someone around who would be used to satisfy his needs when they came. Fool! I wondered what was going through his mind. Did he expect that I was just going to turn a blind eye to all I've seen and just go back to the way things were? One of his messages were even claimed that my sister was the reason why he was forced to cheat on me. His excuse was so lame. We never stopped fooling around, though, even after he stopped by my sister from coming to her house. So there was just no excuse for cheating on me. He was just a dog. My sister goes on to make me see that all guys are the same. She made me see that all men wanted was a lady they could use to solve their immediate needs. My sister showed me something that sent shockwaves down my spine. Her grades had seriously picked up since she decided to not date a guy. Her career was all she focused on. The message was very clear to me. Men were distractions. All my sister was saying about not needing me was true. She finally told me that if I focused on myself and developed my career properly, men would fall at my feet and I could use them however I wanted. I made up my mind there and then to never have anything to do with a guy. They could flock around for all I cared, but it would make no difference. I resumed my lectures and Charles met me at the department in an attempt to reconcile. I gave him the embarrassment of his life while asking him to keep his distance. Over time, other guys tried getting my attention, but there was none to give. I strongly sent the message that there was nothing a guy could offer me. What a man could do, a woman could do too. This was basically how my sister and I lived our lives from then. A guy could approach me and I would just be disgusted by his mere presence. It was that serious. My sister finally graduated with a very good grade, and she got a good high-paying job with an insurance firm in a different part of the country where we lived. I'm sure she would not have achieved all she did if she didn't let go of the guys. I'm still in college and it's still business as usual. Guys flocking around me, but none get my attention. My career is the only thing that I wish to focus on. Men are jerks, and I don't want to be associated with a jerk. Update number 4. So, I've recently graduated from college as a computer scientist and my grades are good. That is what you get when you push men aside and pursue your goal. I got a job with an IT firm which I resumed 2 weeks ago. The job came with some really good packages and I was planning on moving out of my parents' home just as my sister had done so. I could remain the independent woman that she had become. It's been a while since I saw face to face with my sister. We just chat on Facebook on a few occasions, and I'm positive that she's doing great. Why would she not be when she had no man in her life? This was the exact thing I was doing. I had rich suitors asking for my hand in marriage, but I simply kept turning them down. They never even had the opportunity of getting to know where I stayed, or how much more meetings with my parents. My parents informed me that some folks would be coming to visit us by the weekend and I would also have to make myself available. I didn't know why my parents wanted me present at the time. The people who were coming to visit us were family friends, whom we had known since I was little. I didn't want to be there, but it was a weekend and I could not make up an excuse for my absence, so I guess I had to be there. I just found it awkward that my parents made so many preparations just to receive them. The day arrived and the friends came. I was called upon to greet our visitors, and the way they responded showed that they were anticipating my presence. I felt somewhat uncomfortable as I noticed they were all staring at me from time to time. They had their son Reginald, who was not difficult to identify. I'd known Reginald since we were kids, and besides the fact that he added some height and grew a mustache, there was no change to him. My parents demanded I join them once I had set the table. I joined them once I was done setting the dining table, and that was when the reason for the visit played out. My father was the one who spoke while the rest smiled. He noted that these friends of ours wanted me to get married to their son. Now, Reginald's parents were rich, and it seems he's even richer than they were. He also established his auditing firm and business was going well. I guess my parents were expecting that my face would light up at the prospect of getting married to a rich Reggie, but I wasn't impressed and neither was I interested. I waited for my father to round up his speech before I told them I was not ready for this marriage. Well, this was strange to them. I was a graduate who was heading to her late 20s and yet claimed I was not ready for marriage. The expression on the face of everyone present immediately went from happy to disappointed. I did not care. My parents gestured to me to resent what I've just said, but my answer remained the same. To avoid further embarrassment, my parents suggested we all had lunch in the dining which had been set, and they would talk to me later in the day to find out what the issue was. Our wannabe in-laws were too disappointed to eat. Poor Reggie stormed out of the place in anger. Serves both him and every other man whom he represents right. My mother did not wait till the dust settled. She immediately sat me down to find out why I've been behaving the way I just did. Maybe there was already a love interest in my life whom I wanted to get married to, and that could likely be the reason behind me turning down Reggie's proposal. But it wasn't. How could I make my parents understand that I did not want to get married? I told my mother that marriage was not in my plan for the moment, and all I was focused on was a career which I'd barely started. My mother began asking rhetorically if I was going to get married to my career, and if my career was going to give birth to children for me. She began telling me to reconsider my decision as every lady had their flower period. The particular time when guys would just be flocking around and seeking their hand in marriage, after which it'd be difficult finding a husband. My mother warned I should retrace my footsteps to avoid settling down with someone in the future out of desperation. I told her that I would think about it, though there was not much to think about. The mere sight of guys disgusted me, and I could not stand getting married to one. Everybody must not get married. Marriage is not for all. The promise to think about the marriage issue only brought me a little time of peace. My mother soon came demanding to know if I've changed my mind. She blew hot when I told her that I'd carefully thought about things and marriage was not for me. She doubted my sanity. I told her that when I've achieved the level of success I was aiming for in my career, if I needed a child, then I would simply adopt one, but it's a no for me. I called to her attention of my sister's success and achievements so far in her career, things which not have been possible if she's got entangled with a man and marriage issues. My mother stood up and went crying to her husband. I repeated the exact words to the hearing of my father, and he was somewhat understanding. He simply told me to ensure I had a clear picture of the implications of my decision, because I could end up a lonely woman when I grew old. I told him I've counted the cost and it was fine by me. My father respected my decision and asked my mother to let me be. He got across our wannabe in-laws and informed them that there would be no marriage between their son and me. From what I gathered, Reggie has started seeing someone else. I'm still focusing on my career, but my mother has not found it in her to go, just let it go. She still finds little ways of being antagonistic towards me. Update 5. Final update of the story. People can be so hypocritical. And I say with no apologies. 6 months have gone by since I turned down Rich Reggie's proposal. He's currently married and his wife is pregnant. It could have been me. That's not really what hurts me so bad. My older sister Rebecca is the cause of my pain. I got home from work some months ago to find my mother all joyful and merry. She had gone to the grocery store, and from things that we got, I could tell that we were expecting some guests soon. I decided to inquire. My inquiry was not because I cared, it was simply to make her understand that if these guests were coming to seek my hand in marriage, when they were simply just wasting their time. My mother hissed and told me to go ahead, keep deceiving myself by being a spinster. She said her first daughter, Rebecca, had decided to heal the pain which my decision to remain single had caused her by getting married. I was confused. Rebecca, whom I knew would never get married, not then, not ever, she was more like my mentor who had seriously advocated the no man needed policy for success. I was about to dismiss what my mother said when my father said my sister had called to inform them earlier in the day that she was currently engaged and would be coming to introduce her husband to them the next day. I didn't argue further. I just went into my room and picked up the phone to reach out to my sister. I needed to hear from her if things had heard from her parents were true. I tried reaching her line, but it went repeatedly to voicemail. At this point, I immediately went to Facebook to see if I could chat with her, as it would be our means of communication for a while. She was not online, but the things I saw posted on her wall were shocking to say the least. There were several videos of my sister flaunting her man on Facebook as the best thing that's ever happened to her. I could equally see the engagement ring right there on her finger. Nothing else was needed to confirm the news. My sister, who had led me into the path of singlehood, was going to get married. I couldn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about the whole thing. If it were true, then my sister, who would have been given the award for the most deceptive, hypocritical, wicked sister ever. I called in sick at the office the next day, as I wanted to witness what would happen. My sister arrived with her fiancé, and with how wide her lips extended as she smiled, you would think that this lady was agitated that women should have nothing to do with men. I watched as she talked about how they were so in love, and how they were meant for each other. Her rich fiancé had 2 kids from his previous marriage, and she claimed it didn't bother her. How would it bother her when she knew she could not give birth? I was certain she was happy her fiancé already had kids, as he would not have any issues with her in the future when he discovered that she was barren. He was indeed her perfect match, a rich divorcee with kids. My mother suddenly said with a smirk that I would never understand what my sister was feeling, as I've chosen a life of singlehood. I was already hurt from the whole deceitfulness. But what happened next simply added salt to an open wound. My sister of all people replied that I would come around. I carried my sister aside to find out what prompted her to abandon the notion she had made to adopt over the years. Times change, was all my sister had to mutter. After all these times, I would have been married and possibly have my own kids if I've not listened to my sister, and here she was telling me that times change. How did she expect me to move on? I kept mute throughout the rest of the day. My older sister and her lover left her home, and my mom almost taunted the life out of me. I made up my mind that my sister would not have a happy ending as long as I remained single. I remained calm as they carried out their wedding preparations. It was 3 weeks to the wedding, and the wedding cards had been sent out. That was the moment I visit her fiancé to tell him something about his lover that he probably didn't know. From the way his eyes opened wide, it was clear that he was not aware that my elder sister was barren. I told him, "Don't take my words for it." I asked him to confirm with my sister when he spoke with her. My sister's fiancé asked her about it, and there was no choice what she had. She couldn't lie. He could easily demand a test to have her checked out. Upon discovery, he called off the wedding, which was in just a few weeks. He told my sister that he would have actually gone ahead to get married to her if she had just told him from the onset about her issues, but he could no longer trust her now that she's lied to him. My sister was sad for herself and angry at me, as I was the only one who knew about her secret. She came back to attack me. My parents intervened, and my sister told them the wedding's been called off because of me. I went on to reveal to my parents that their daughter was incapable of getting pregnant. My parents were disappointed in both of us, and they just left us alone. My sister broke down crying, and I mockingly told her, men are jerks. You don't need them, remember? Just focus on developing yourself, and they'll be flocking around you. I walked away while she continued crying. I'm currently single, just as my sister is, but I have high hopes. Because, well, I still have my womb intact. So I want to know from you guys about this topic. First of all, let's talk about this sister-sister relationship and how it ended. Is there a possible way that this could have ended differently? So I want to know your exact thoughts. Maybe you've been in a situation like this, had a bad breakup, vice versa. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop your comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me on this story. I hope you enjoyed it. That's all the content for today. Consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next one.